Hello and welcome to this episode of the Burns Guide. Today we'll be looking at the famous mock heroic recited at every Burns supper, To a Haggis. As always, we will read the poem and then break it down into its craft, context and resonance. Fair fa' your honest sonsy face, great chieftain of the puddin' race. Aboon them all ye tak your place, painch, tripe or thairm, weel are ye worthy o' a grace, as lang's my airum. The groaning trencher there ye fill, your hurdies like a distant hill, your pin would help to mend a mill in time o' need, while through your pores the dews distil like amber bead. His knife see rustic labour dicht, and cut ye up wi' ready slicht, trenching your gushing entrails bricht like ony ditch, and then, oh what a glorious sicht, warm reeking, rich. Then, horn for horn, they stretch and strive, deal tack the hindmost, on they drive, till all their wheel-swalled kites belive are bent like drums. Then auld Gidman, maist like to rive, bethank it hums. Is there, that ower his French ragout, or olio that would staw a sou, or fricassee would mak her spew wi' perfect scunner, looks doon wi' sneerin' scorn for view on sic a dinner? Poor deevil, see him ower his trash, as feckless as a withered rash, his spindle shank a gid whiplash, his neave a knit, through bloody flood or field to dash, oh how unfit. But mark the rustic haggis fed, the trembling earth resounds his tread, clapping his wally neave a blade, he'll mak it whistle, and legs and arms and heads will sned like taps o' thistle. Ye poors, wha mak mankind your care, and dish them out their bill of fare, auld Scotland wants nae skinking ware that joups and luggies, but, if you wish her great for prayer, gie her a haggis. The poem is written in the standard Habbie. Used so frequently by Burns, it is sometimes referred to as the Burns stanza. It has an AAA-BAB rhyming scheme. In the opening stanza, Burns begins addressing the meat pudding with fair fa', in other words, fair tidings befall, its honest, sonsy face. By describing its jolly face, Burns begins his personification of the haggis. He declares it to be not the king or lord, but the chieftain of the puddin' race. This choice of word is specific and deliberate, with its connotations of clanship, a Scottish phenomenon. Throughout the poem, we'll see Burns nationalising the dish by associating it with various aspects of Scottishness. He tells us it sits above all other types of offal, from painch to tripe to thairm, and is worthy of a grace as lang's his airm, as long as his arm. Note here that in Scots, thairm and airm is a full rhyme. We are told the trencher is groaning under the weight of the great haggis, giving us an impression of the enormity of the dish, with the serving platter caving in, barely able to hold it. There are several images in the poem that convey the idea of things being swollen, bent, or rounded, giving the poem a bloated feel. He continues the personification when he uses the absurdly comical simile that the haggis's hurdies, or buttocks, are like a distant hilltop. He tells us that its pin, or skewer, could hold together an entire mill, again emphasizing the sheer size and strength of the haggis. The image is completed with its dews, that are like beads of amber. These golden droplets distill from the haggis. The connotation with whisky is subtle, but helps to gently associate it further with Scottishness. We now move on to the ritualistic carving of the haggis. Here Burns champions rustic labour, associating the haggis with the rural values of hard work and simplicity. The poem then savours the graphic description of the entrails gushing out, a grisly end to the chieftain who has been portrayed as so human by this point in the poem. He is now disembowelled before our very eyes, making the ultimate sacrifice. Another Scottish hero who similarly suffered comes to mind in the form of William Wallace. In the next stanza, we have this image of the whole family all fighting over the food like animals, and the devil will take the slowest eater. Another comical image is presented of their kites bent like drums. Once again the poem revels in our gluttony. The goodman, or the head of the household, at the top of the table, about to explode, thanks the Lord. Burns now compares the haggis to other continental nations' seemingly more refined foods, fricassee and ragout that would apparently make a sow vomit. Burns portrays them all as pretentious trash. Once again, the poem champions the values of simplicity over showy pretension. We may read into this the Scots Calvinist tradition of plainness and modesty over decoration and ornamentation associated with Catholicism. It is no accident that the other dishes mentioned are fricassee and ragout, both French, a Catholic country, and olio, a stew from Spain, also a Catholic country. We are told that other nations fed on this pretentious stuff are feeble or feckless like a withered rush. Their legs are like a whip's lash and fists like nuts. Notice how the ultimate purpose of food for Burns is to breed warriors that can dash through bloody rivers and fields. It again glorifies violence and evokes bloody images, celebrating the proud martial spirit of Scotland. Now we see the contrast of the enfeebled foreigner fed on fricassee with the haggis-fed Scots under whom the earth trembles. The haggis creates warriors so strong they can chop off heads, arms, and legs at will, as if chopping off the heads of flowers. But not just any flower. Again, he nationalises haggis with the use of thistle, or thistle, Scotland's national flower. The nationalisation is finally complete when Scotland is at last explicitly and triumphantly mentioned in the final stanza, receiving its haggis in grateful prayer, overcoming all other sloppy dishes or skinking ware. The poem was first published in the Caledonian Mercury in December 1786 in anticipation of the second edition of his poems chiefly in the Scottish dialect. Burns was living in Edinburgh as a minor celebrity, lodging in the first floor of a tenement on Baxter's Close off the Royal Mile in the heart of the old town. Burns had not long arrived in the vibrant city of Edinburgh, a city famous around Europe at the time for being a hotbed of genius. To the genteel society of Edinburgh, the heaven-taught ploughman was something of a novelty, with his Ayrshire tongue and country garb. It was in part because of his rustic charm, coupled with his poetic genius, that he could scintillate the dinner tables of polite society. At one such evening, he was said to have recited the poem To a Haggis. The inspiration for To a Haggis can perhaps be found in one or two of Robert Ferguson's poems. While in Edinburgh, Burns paid tribute to Robert Ferguson, a poet he greatly admired and sought to emulate, by offering to pay for a tombstone with an inscription he'd written in dedication. Ferguson had died in tragic circumstances in 1774 and was buried in a pauper's grave in Canongate Cemetery. It is hard not to hear Burns's echo in Ferguson's Collar Oysters, also written in the standard Habbie. It sings the praises of the fresh oysters of the Firth of Forth. Burnsian sentiments can be heard in, while glaikit fools, our rife for cash, pamper their whames with foosome trash. I think a chiel may gaily pass, he's nae ill bodin, that gusts his gab wi' oyster sauce and hen wheels sodden. The other Ferguson poem touted as helping to inspire To a Haggis is, of course, addressed to the principals and professors of the University of St Andrews on their superb treat to Dr. Samuel Johnson. In this satirical poem, Ferguson takes umbrage at the fuss made by the professors of St Andrews University in catering to the famous man of letters Samuel Johnson during his visit to the town. Ferguson reminds them that Dr. Johnson had written in his dictionary under oats, a grain which in England is generally given to horses, but in Scotland supports the people. Or as Ferguson puts it, mind you it's Sam the lion loon, as in his dictionary laid down, that aits in England are a feast to coo and horse and siccan beast, while in Scots ground this growth was common to gust the gab of man and woman. He goes on to suggest a more fitting menu for the visit of the English writer than the more refined courses cooked up by the university. In primus then, a haggis fat, weel tottled and a seething pat, wi' spice and ingens weel cawed through, had helped to gust the stirra's moo, and placed itsel in truncher clean before the gilpie's glurin een. Secundo then, a good sheep's heed, whose hide was singit never fleed, and 4 black trotters clad wi' gursel, bedoon his throat had learned to hursel. What think ye neist o' good fat bros, to clag his ribs a dainty doze, and white and bloody puddin's ruth, to gar the doctor's skirl o' druth. Haggis, made from heart, liver, and lungs, mixed with oatmeal and onions, suet and spices, and boiled inside a sheep's stomach, was, at the time, not a dish eaten daily or even regularly, but an occasional treat eaten in Scotland and parts of England too. It was only one of a variety of foodstuffs considered a Scottish cuisine, along with the aforementioned sheep's head. Burns, however, in singing his praises of the haggis and associating it with traditional Scottish concepts and values such as clanship, military prowess, and Calvinist simplicity, transformed it into a national emblem of Scottishness. The first ever Burns supper took place in 1801, 5 years after the death of the bard. Some of his friends came together to celebrate his life. What else would be served other than the haggis that Burns had championed so fondly? The performative nature of the piece lent itself to a bit of theatre at the evening, and it has become a mainstay of Burns suppers ever since. Burns suppers are celebrated in Scotland and other parts of the world on January the 25th every year, the day of Burns's birth. It has become common for the haggis to be piped in before it is addressed with a poem and finally carved, served, and eaten alongside neeps and tatties, otherwise known as turnips and potatoes. Some have even taken to serving a creamy whisky sauce over it. Burns would surely be turning in his grave at the sight of the sauce, jouping in a luggie. Haggis also earns itself a place in most chip shops around Scotland, and its sonsy face sits on any Scottish cooked breakfast plate. It is also, if a little ironically, to be found in most Scottish fine dining restaurants, where you might see haggis bonbons. Were it not for Burns, it may not have become so inseparably intertwined with Scottishness, and enjoy such widespread fame and notoriety, striking fear into the hearts of travelling tourists looking to sample the local fare, and high cholesterol into the hearts of Scots reposed in grateful prayer.